Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Door to Door. I'm Virginia Stanley, and I'm here with my cohorts. Who are you? Chris Connolly.
That's a big question. Yes, I am Chris Connolly. You nailed it, Virginia. Yes, I am Chris Connolly. Thrilled to be here. Hi, everyone.
And I'm Lainey Mays.
And we're the Library Love Fest team, HarperCollins Library Marketing Department, coming to you from various ports in the storm. And we have a really wonderful episode for you all today. We're so looking forward to hearing this conversation. We are joined by best-selling author Gail Tsukiyama, who is joined by her editor, associate publisher at HarperCollins, Tara Parsons. Gail, Tara, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and to talk about this beautiful book, The Color of Air, which is on sale today. Jacket there. Ah, how beautiful is that jacket?
Oh, it's gorgeous. I love it.
Love it.
Tara.
Yeah. So, okay, just some introductions here. So, Gail Tsukiyama, as many of you know, is a New York Times bestselling author, Women of the Silk, The Samurai's Garden. She's 7 previous novels. She's the recipient of the Academy of American Poets Award and the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Literary Award. This is the book that has had all of us absolutely transfixed from the second that it was launched at Harper. It's just absolutely a beautiful historical novel that transcends time. I feel like we've been talking about this book for such a long time, and now it's just out today, which is sort of strange. It almost feels like now should be the paperback, because when it first was announced, we were just so excited that we had you here with us. So Tara Parsons, associate publisher. Tara and Gail, you have a unique relationship, and not one that many people get to see, you know, to have that drape drawn back and to see the inner workings of how a book gets from Gail's head to Tara's hands to the books to the shelves of the library. So first of all, Gail, thank you so much. It's an honor to have you with us today. And it was
You're so sweet.
Nah.
Thank you. I don't have words to thank all of you and everybody at Harper Via and HarperCollins. You've made this journey really comfortable. And this is our first date together. So I can't tell you how lovely it's been. And I agree with you. I think that we've been working on the book, Tara and I, for a while. So it does seem like the book came out already, to some sense. But now today's the day, it's its birthday, and I'm thankful.
Well, I think first, before we get started and turn it over to you, I think we need to raise a glass and say happy birthday to The Color of Air. Absolutely beautiful.
Happy birthday.
Congratulations.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And thank you, Mott's applesauce. Apple juice. And I neglected to say that Harper Via is the imprint under which the book is published. So Tara, why don't you kick it off with your conversation with Gail? Gail, give us a framework of the book, and then we can go into some of the questions that we talked about yesterday, just about, your relationship and the inner workings of it.
Well, this book was a long time in coming between the last book and this book. And I felt that I needed to take a little break and think about what I wanted to write about. And I tend to write a lot about my heritages, because my mother was Chinese from Hong Kong, my father Japanese from Hawaii. The books have kind of fluctuated from one culture to the next. There's probably 3 books written on China and the Chinese culture, and 3 that covered the Japanese side of my upbringing. And when I started to think about this particular book, I wanted to write about the side that I hadn't really looked into very much, and that was Hawaii. I went a lot and visited a lot as a child because my father was born and raised there and all his family was there. But I realized, like I realized on my Japanese culture, I didn't know a lot about it. And I think with books, what gets an author going is that they're curious about something. And that's usually what kickstarts my kind of thinking about what the next book is going to be. And I remember thinking to myself, how did Hawaii become the Hawaii that we know today? How did it become this blended society in which all these different cultures came together and pretty much created what we see as the Hawaiian culture now? And that was the seed that started The Color of Air. Something as wide as that kind of narrowed down into this kind of intimate story about this community, because that's, I think, the more I thought about it, the more I thought about how did all these communities come together. And so it led to The Color of Air.
Well, Gail, nothing has been more exciting to me than getting to work with you. You know, Gail's mortified because I often say that I'm her #1 fan, and I say that all the time. I said that probably when I first pitched this book to all of our sales reps, but it's absolutely true. And Gail's work is so significant to me, at least partially because of her Japanese heritage and my Japanese heritage. So it's a real unique honor for me to work with you. And then to find out, when I did get a chance to start chatting with you about these pages, how absolutely wonderful and warm and amazing you are. I feel like we have such fun on our phone calls. Usually, you know, we're very sober right now, but sometimes we drink wine together on the phone, which I think is so.
It is 11 a.m. here, but if you insist.
Let's do that. But it really is a unique relationship, even for me in editorial. I don't work this way with everybody. We were talking a little bit yesterday about how sometimes the author-editor relationship is very formal, and sometimes it's looser. And I thought maybe we could jump into that a little bit if you wanted to talk a little bit about how the process was for you in working on the book.
And she's staring me in the face, so I better be nice. No, I mean, I think we do have an incredibly unique relationship. Based on so many things. We have a good senses of humor. We both like wine and cheese. She's my #1 fan. How can you not love her? But also this very thin thread of us both having Asian cultures behind us. I've never experienced that in the business yet. I've never had an editor who has an Asian background. And not that, you know, it doesn't mean that it's going to work because Tara's part Asian. It just means that in our case, for some reason, we're simpatico in that way, above everything else, above our love for language and words and a good story and, you know, everything else that makes a book a book. But we also have this thing where if I write something, she understands it in a different way. Which has been a really lovely experience because, you know, I don't need to explain a lot of things. I mean, she never questions things that has to do with the cultural aspects of the books. Not that every other editor has at the same vein, but there is that kind of comfort level, I think, that we have there that I haven't had simply because we share a culture. You know, we share a background of growing up in a certain way, learning certain things, and that has been kind of a unique experience for me this time around. You know, and I'm really lucky.
It's been so amazing for me, and Gail has been so influential, not just on my reading life, but actually in my family life, because her book inspired our entire family to go to Hawaii. This is actually
like I needed to twist your arm on that one.
It was pretty magical though, because we were supposed to go to Iceland, and there's a mix up with the passports that I'm not going to blame on my husband. but it's definitely his fault. But and we had 24 hours to go somewhere else. And magically, there were flights available for Hawaii. And I had just started working on Gail's book. And it was such an amazing experience to go there, having read your pages, because you have an amazing ability that many reviewers have talked about to capture all of the sensory details of Hawaii, of wherever you're writing about. And I think that it seems like it could only be born of having tasted the food, having smelled the smells, having been there. Can you tell us a little bit about that in all of your books, whether you've been to all of the places that you've written about?
First, let me tell you that my next book will be set in Italy.
Oh, woohoo! Fantastic.
I need to taste the food, have the pasta. No, I think because I've grown up in the San Francisco Bay Area, because I'm this American kid beyond everything else, with the culture, the Asian cultures behind me. When I began writing, and I will go back a little bit because I think this set the tone of all the books that were to come after. I felt really strongly that if I could capture the place that I was writing about, that it wouldn't matter where the place was or how historically back or forward it was set, that you would understand the people that lived there, that came from there, which meant that I had to really embrace what it was to be there, how it was to be there, the senses, the sights, the food they ate, how the dialect they used, the rhythms and the language. And if I could set that in tone, the reader would be able to understand the story regardless of how foreign it might be to them. How foreign it might be to somebody who is, I don't know, a farmer in South Dakota or Iowa, who sat down to read a book about, World War II China or Japan. So that has always been my major goal, is to make the reader feel comfortable within the story, to make them understand that this is the way they lived, and to understand the functions of the characters. I don't know if that makes sense. So that's why it was very important to me from the get-go to get those 5 senses in there, because once the reader could touch that, they'd understand everything else, because everything else is just human nature. How we live, how we feel, the struggles we go through, the loves we have, the deaths in our lives. That's all that makes up a good story. But it's everything behind the story. If you can get the reader to step into the story, that's what I've always tried to do. With The Color of Air, I mean, how lucky can you get when you write about Hawaii? It hands you the senses on a platter. I don't know if you felt this, Tara, but when you got off the plane, the first thing I notice when I get off the plane in Hawaii is the humidity, the warmth, but the smells. The smells of the tropical flowers are so strong and so lovely, and you just know you're in Hawaii. And I think that was something I was trying to bring forth in The Color of Air. When you step on the islands, you're transported, and I've got to transport the reader to Hawaii, and this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring to the reader all the things that make Hawaii Hawaii, that make Hilo the place that it is. And once they step into that, the story will just embrace them, hopefully. And so that's part of the reason why setting scene is so important to me, and sense of place. I remembered in another book I had written, Street of a Thousand Blossoms. The first image for me was place. I knew that this little boy was going to run down this alleyway in Yanaka, Tokyo. And that's where they had all these narrow alleyways. And this is what he would see when he was running down that alley. And so it was setting up that same kind of premise in The Color of Air, only having this lush background of Hawaii to kind of grab onto. And it makes the writing process easier also. Because when you have a great sense of place, it just takes over to a large extent, because place defines the characters and characters define the place. And with this particular book, because I was writing about communities that came together, that blended together to become what is the Hawaii we know today, it added to everything. It's the Chinese brought this sense, the Japanese brought this, the Portuguese brought Portuguese chicken. I mean, all this came together to make Hawaii what it was today. And that was what I was intrigued about. How did this happen? When did this happen? And how did they live? And those are the kind of questions I think every writer starts to ask when they begin a book. The how, what, where, when, why kind of questions. Because when you begin a book, it's like a marriage. It's gonna be years, and there are times when you want to divorce this book. So you have to stay with it. You have to go the distance, and so you have to make the marriage as wonderful as it can be. And when you have a place like Hawaii, and when you're trying to understand how all these people came together and lived together and define what we have now as Hawaii, it was really kind of a lovely experience for me, beyond anything. But yeah, it was getting the lushness down so that the reader would feel it the way I felt it when I was writing it. And the way they felt, all these immigrants felt. I mean, they came as indentured servants, but they came to one of the most beautiful places in the world. So it's trying to find that balance, to say, here you are in this beautiful world, but life is not easy. And you band together and you find community. And that's, I think, was my main goal when I began the book. And I hope I answered.
I just want to jump in to say that in the months that we have been talking about this book, I think the word that keeps coming to mind is atmospheric. That's just, I mean, it's just so painted on every page. The characters too. I mean, it's you are there. So that's how
I've done my job.
You've done your job.
I've done my job.
I would love it if you would just sort of give like a bare bones sort of a description of the book, and then if you would read that. We talked about this. Nobody thinks that I'm throwing Gail under the bus. We talked about it, but because we're on this subject of the entry into this world that you've created, that existed, but you brought it to us at this time, 1935 and before. Can you just set the stage? What is the book about? And then if you could read the beginning of that, it's just so lush and beautiful, and you just feel like you're right there. It's just enchanting.
You're making me blush. It's kind of an interesting process, and we talk about process a little bit as I'm talking about the book as a whole. I knew when I began that it was going to be about a community that comes to Hilo, Hawaii in 1935. And I chose 1935 because the backdrop of a volcano erupting. And it's a real volcano Mauna Loa is a real volcano, but the eruption really did happen in 1935, and it did start to flow towards the town of Hilo. And so I had this great idea that this book was going to be set when some kind of major happening was going to happen. And I started out with a tsunami, believe it or not. I thought, there's going to be a tsunami that comes and it's going to wipe out downtown, and and these will be the survivors. And I start writing and I'm thinking, this is a really good tsunami scene, but I don't know about this. If it wipes out everybody, what's the book about? So I stepped back and at the time there were a couple other books that came out that had a tsunami. And so I said, I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to put this in my little file cabinet I'll use it on another book. And then I began what I do with every book. I start researching a bit. I just start reading about time and period, place. And anything I can get my hands on that tells me a little bit about that time and place. And I come upon the fact that a volcano erupted, that Mauna Loa erupted during 1935, lasted for 6 weeks, and was heading towards Hilo. And I thought, oh, there we go, drama. We've got a volcano erupting. We've got this community who's worrying about it. And behind all the seismic reactions that are happening, there's the emotional seismic reactions between the characters that are there, that make up the community. And I thought, that's it. That's what I'm going to write about. So it's a story about Japanese community that had made their way from Japan to Hilo, Hawaii, to work as plantation workers. Not all of them, because some of them have already gone on to other aspects, shop owners, doing other work in order to keep the village, the town going. But one of the main characters is Koji. He comes over as a young boy, and he comes to Hilo and grows up there and finds that he's much more Hawaiian than he ever was Japanese. And they're supposed to be there for 3 years as indentured servants working at the plantation. And his family ends up staying there for the rest of their lives. So this is primarily Koji's story, but it's also a community of voices. And that was an interesting thing in terms of being a writer and knowing that you had a lot of voices with a lot of stories to tell, and how was I going to tell it? And so it revolves around Koji, his great love for Mariko, who is already gone when the book begins. She passes away of cancer. And Mariko's son, Daniel, who's been in the mainland studying to be a doctor and returns to Hilo just at the time when the eruption is happening because of some disgrace in his life back in Chicago. So what begins as that is the very beginning grows on to see the tremors that come out of this is a lot of the secrets of the past in this community, and how it comes together in the end, and how they come together in the end. So it's very much about that in a nutshell, I guess, without giving away too much. You would like me to do a little bit of reading now?
Yes, I think that would be wonderful.
I'm going to just read a little bit from the very first section. There are about 5 main voices and then sections of ghost voices. So there are, and it's going back and forth in time. And I was hoping that it would be somewhat like a chorus. When they all sang together, you would hear this harmony from it. This first section is called Mangoes. The sky threatened rain as Koji Sanada approached the green bungalow, where the pungent scent of rotting mangoes mingled with a hint of smoke. The bitter remnants of the pre-harvest cane burning that drifted down from the surrounding plantations. He knew it all too well. Sugarcane had been his life since his family had arrived in Hilo, Hawaii, by way of Osaka, Japan in 1895, along with all the other immigrant workers who had flocked to jobs on the island's sugar and pineapple plantations. Koji had been 10 years old, the older of 2 children and the only son. He had immediately embraced the wildness of the island as his own, so different from his traditional Japanese upbringing. Along the way, the 3 years his parents had been contracted to stay before returning to Japan had turned into a lifetime. Koji walked up the dirt path to the house he knew so well. It was here on the Big Island, near the growing community of Hilo, that he found a new home at the Puli plantation, along with years of backbreaking work, toiling under the hot sun, the wind and rain, the tremors and quakes, and it was here on the island of 5 volcanoes that he'd also found Mariko Abe. He paused to look around Mariko's yard now and felt a dull ache at having let her down. The garden, always her pride, was wild and overgrown without her. He meant to come pick the mangoes and take them to Nori at the Okawa fish market. But once again, time had gone away from him. He continued up the path to see her beloved mango tree, planted by her grandfather, but now empty of fruit. It had been wet and muggy all week, and the moist ground was heavily blanketed with leaves and rotted fruit. Only the dark seeds of the first fist-sized mangoes still recognizable. It always amazed Koji how quickly the earth could reclaim its own. Another tremor underfoot shook Koji from his thoughts. The island had been restless with waves of slight tremors for the past 2 months, and he worried that they foreshadowed something bigger and stronger. So far, nothing had come of them, but the island's history said otherwise. It's just the island hiccuping, his mother used to say, to coax the fear out of his younger sister. Koji hoped it was nothing more now that Mariko's son, Daniel, was finally coming home from the mainland after more than 10 years of study. The last time Koji had seen him was during his mother's final months. Since her death, time had played tricks on him, moving both too fast and too slow without her. He couldn't help but feel it was as if part of Mariko was returning to him with her son, reawakening long buried memories. Koji walked to the woodshed where Mariko kept her gardening tools. He quickly cleaned around the tree before going up to the house, where he was certain to find Nori, making everything sure was ready for Daniel's return.
That was beautiful. You know,
A little bit of stumbling there.
no, it was beautiful.
This
And
is my first reading with you guys.
Wow.
I'm just thinking about that.
Oh, wow.
I
It was
love that.
beautiful.
Well, I just, I think it's such a perfect section to read because it really shows just how much immediately your writing brings readers into the story. I felt like you could feel it, you could smell it, you could taste it, you could really be in the story right away because of your writing. And I think it also speaks to what you said earlier, because I know there are parts of the book, because it is based in real life historical detail, people are so excited about that. I think his historical readers will love it because of that, and because you do have such great details in there that are true and accurate. But there's a timeless quality to your writing because you're putting people so in the moment with your characters, that it feels like you're there. I think that's why it sometimes feels almost like a contemporary read when you're reading it, because it feels like these characters, are me, that I'm Daniel arriving on, a boat coming into his hometown. That's what it felt like to me when I was reading. I was almost every one of these characters along the way, whether they were men or women, which is kind of unusual. I don't think that's a common thing for readers to feel like they are every character when they're in the book, especially when the characters are so different from one another. And I really felt that way, except for Franklin. I was never Franklin. He's a bad guy.
There are Franklins out there, though, we know. Yeah, I mean, it's always, I think one of the hardest things of developing characters is to make them distinctly themselves. Especially when you're writing in a different culture, in a different time, and all these things. And as I was saying, it's always hard to hear that I'm writing historical novels, and I think it's because I get so close to these characters. I think they're friends. They can't be historically. That would mean they're back in time. They're right up here with me. They're sitting right next to me. They're in my head. They're in my heart. So it makes it very hard to think historically. But yeah, anytime that you're writing back in time, I mean, yes, it's historically, but they're also very present.
Well, I think, some of the characters that were so meaningful to me, it was actually the aunties, the Hilo fish market ladies. I just felt like they had such a unique friendship, their family by nature of their friendship. And I really was so moved by it and loved it. Can you talk a little bit about your inspiration for them?
How they say.
Is your phone ringing?
I think it's Steven Spielberg calling.
We really want, just for the people watching, Gail and I are obsessed with Sandra Oh, and and I think she could very much play a character in this book and would be perfect for it.
Well, I mean, to go back to talking about the Hilo aunties, you know, I mean, everybody has often said to writers in general, oh, did you know that person? Or is that person this relative? Or is that really your husband? You know, those kind of things like that. And I always say there has never been a character that is the composite of one of my, you know, somebody I know in real life. There's aspects of them, of course, you know, there's aspects of everybody. With the Hilo aunties, I think I'm at a time in my life where I've been so lucky and so grateful to have all these people behind me, whether they're relatives like real aunts, or whether they're friends, or whether, you know, you're all my Hilo aunties in that way. You know, anybody who supports you, anybody who's been there through thick and thin, through good and bad. Those are the Hilo aunties of my mind, you know. So when I was writing this, and I was writing about community, and I wanted to write about a group of women who had each other's back, you know, and it didn't matter through this time. And that way I could go back and set up, of course, the relationships, the hardships they went through. But it didn't matter because the Hilo aunties stuck together, kind of thing. And, you know, so in that way, they've come from everybody I've known in ways. The whole idea of the Hilo aunties. They're probably, I mean, I have aunties in a lot of books, I realized, you know, back in prior books, and I think it's the Asian culture. But these Hilo aunties, these are the ones I would have to say are really the closest to my heart as a writer and as a person, because I think they are built from all the Hilo aunties in my life. You know, so and I've got to the point where I could kind of all define them in different ways, and I think maybe that's why they feel a little closer to hopefully the reader when they read them, that they'll find aspects of them, people they know, you know, and they're Hilo aunties, Hilo aunties of their lives. So yeah, that they are some of the characters that I really kind of hold close of all the books I've written, because of that. You know, because we all have those Hilo aunties.
I love that. And we didn't talk about this question, but I know we've talked about this before about Koji. And there was a time when I thought Koji is too perfect. He's the perfect man. And you know, you really did make him a three-dimensional complicated character. But I also just loved him so much. He really did seem like the perfect man to me. And I wondered, you know, is there an inspiration for Koji, or is he also an amalgamation of a lot of people that you know?
Perfect man, that was from my imagination.
I thought this would be a great opportunity for you to say,
yeah,
my
I know you're trying to put me on the spot there. Well, Koji did have his secrets.
He did.
You know, I mean, I think it's in like another character who was kind of quote unquote the perfect man in the Samurai's Garden. The Matsu character, you know,
yes.
the man who would carry rocks up a mountain
exactly
to build a garden for his great love. You know, I mean, maybe I'm writing Walt Disney stuff. Perfect man, the perfect character. But I think that Koji and probably Matsu are the closest in that sense. You know, but you know, it's to be perfect, to love somebody and to do whatever they can for them, you know, and the community. I don't know. I mean, you know, I think I just kind of did it relative to his life was really Daniel and Mariko, you know, and he would have done anything for them. And I think that just kind of carried over as writing. He became this guy who kind of, you know, would run through storms to get to them.
I loved that. And I have to say, there's a part in the book, no matter how many times I read it, every time I read it, I think it's the second to last chapter at the end. of it that I cry every single time. It doesn't matter, even when I know it's coming and I say, don't get upset. It just
I know which one you're talking about.
it always gets me. It's so beautiful. And I think you capture this emotion, this love that I think you can relate to, even from a mother and son's kind of love. It's that kind of power, I think, that you're able to capture in that section that is so moving.
But well, it was with your help also, my dear editor. The back and forth, the to and fro's. I have her photo on my dartboard.
Actually, that reminds me, I forgot to ask you, was there a particularly painful edit, or were they all just wonderful?
Well, I mean, as any writer would admit, it's always hard when somebody says, well, I don't know if this works so well. But, first of all, she's the most gracious editor. She knows how to manipulate. She knows how to say it in a way where, she's bringing you down, but somehow it feels like she's still raising you up. So I'm kind of going, how did she do that? I think that over the years, what I've done is tried to step back. Whenever I see something in the column written, I think about it. Rather, of course, there's that initial she didn't like it, and then I take a little bit of time, and I think that's always distance is always the best thing for a writer-editor relationship is step back and try to understand what she's trying to say here, and why doesn't she get it? I'm much smarter. She just doesn't get it. That doesn't work anymore. And as I've told Tara that you need objective eyes. A writer cannot be with something day in and day out. We're so close to our characters and to the storyline and to the plot. We need somebody to step away and be farther away and to be able to look at the story and catch things that we can no longer catch because we're too close. We're too forgiving. I think that's it. We start to forgive things that, maybe we shouldn't forgive. But give them a little more edge here. Do this there. Does this really work? The only time I wanted not to choke her, but to swat a little, no, was that she had said to me, I think we need another section here. And I was thinking, and this is like, I don't know how many, it goes back and forth, and you think the last back was the last back, and then it comes back again, and because she's constantly rereading it and looking at it from a different point of view. And then she said, I think we need a new section here. And I'm thinking, a new section, and then we went and we talked about it. And she explained, well, I think blah, 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 blah. And then I stepped away from it and I started to think about what we were talking about, and it made perfect sense. And I think it's that kind of relationship that we developed really quickly that I think is really lucky because I've never taken anything that she's purposely doing this to be mean. It's always been in a thing we have that singular goal is to make the story the best story it can be. And if I keep thinking about this in my mind, then I don't take anything personally. It's much easier to be a little distant from it and then understand why she's doing it and then play with it. And sometimes the rewriting aspect of writing a book is really wonderful, because you think it's done and then you realize, oh, it was so not done. This makes it so much better, and I get it now, and so it's that kind of relationship back and forth that I think we're very lucky to have, and Tara's really made The Color of Air a stronger book because of you know. And
Well, you made it such a pleasure because just so everybody knows, Gail never said no. Gail always said, you know what, I really want to know what you think, and let me know. And it was such a great relationship, and it was great conversation that we would had around the edits too.
yeah,
And
I think that made it easier, because if she had said something I disagreed with, I would have said, I don't think this is needed, or I don't think we need to, do this. But because I thought about it, and because if I always feel if somebody can tell me something that makes sense, that to the plot of the book, to the development of the character, then you have to listen, because if you don't listen, you might miss something. And we all know how good readers are out there. We all know that book clubs are these smart people who come together and they've read hundreds of books, and they are going to see what Tara sees, right? So I need to be, as the writer, to understand that too. And I think that's why, this is the 8th book. Your skin gets thicker, you get a little more understanding. You're less impulsive to say that this is wrong. I'm right and you're wrong. Although I don't know if I would do that anyway. I think that I was really trusting, in the sense that she knew, if I knew that if she could explain it to me, that it was probably the right process. And if I really disagreed, I would have disagreed. And fortunately, we kind of agreed on most of the plot lines, and I did add a section, and it did work.
Everybody who's watching this needs to make a pact with us that they're not going to say that section was the only section they didn't like of the book.
Well, maybe if they do, I'm going to go back to you, my friend. See? Anyway, so that's part of the process, and every editor and writer has a different, thing. But there's an intimacy to be a writer and what we have with our editors, because writing is so personal. And it's so, it so affects how the book is going to turn out. But writing a book is so personal in itself that it's like part of your heart and soul. So, you have to be a good editor to be able to deal with that, to deal with knowing a writer will be sensitive and, and worried and cocky and whatever else you can throw in there, of how writers will be thinking about their book, and being able to find balance is what makes a good editor, and what makes a good relationship between writer and editor. And I think most writers out there would say the same. You need to have that, and what you do develop is, by the end of the book, is this kind of friendship, and it's this kind of like personal friendship. I've never met her in person. We've virtually met all the time. I was all ready to come to New York and wine and dine, and now you won't let me in because I'm from California.
We're going to do this eventually.
All right.
I'm coming out there though, because you've got the wine country.
You have wine in New York. I will be ready and waiting when the pandemic ends. But anyway, so to go back, I would say that I'm incredibly fortunate, because it was a book that came after a long time for me, and I didn't know how it would be accepted, and then I was so fortunate that it landed in Tara's lap, and that she embraced it. And what more could a writer want than to have an editor who right away, our first phone call, she just said, "I love this book." And I said, "I love this editor."
Now, Gail, I can't help it. And Virginia, let me know if we don't have time for this, but just that seemed like the perfect segue for Gail. I'd love for you to tell listeners what you were doing between books, because I think it's so wonderful, and I'd love for you to talk about it just a little bit.
Yes, I agree.
I've always wanted to write, but I always wanted to join the Peace Corps when I was young. And I began, really diving into writing, and I never got to Africa. And I got to a point in my life where, you know, I've been moderately successful with the books, and just really felt lucky that all this came to me, and wanted to do something to give back. So I've been involved for many years before Waterbridge Outreach, Books and Water, which is what now it's a small grassroots nonprofit in which I'm the executive director, which means I lick the stamps and put it on the envelopes. And what we do is we do water and book and literacy projects. And we fund water and literacy projects for developing communities all over the world. And my happiest moments, I mean, we've done a lot of water wells and communities that never had water before, but some of my happiest moments have been putting in libraries. And we've currently done a library in a primary school in Uganda, and we're currently doing one now in Cambodia. And these are children who've never had access to books. So I was very lucky, and I got a couple friends to come on, you know, and just said, would you be interested in, you know, helping Waterbridge? And so I collected some writer friends, and we've kind of done this with the help of a great small team of people that we keep it going. And it's very grassroots. It's like one project at a time, but it couldn't bring greater happiness besides this. You know, so I'm with the two great loves of my life right now. You know, and this pandemic has been very difficult also, you know, for not only for us here, but, you know, for other countries and what they're going through. And they've done so many things that are amazing because they don't have water access the way we do. And that's the hardest. You know, when we hear, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands, but you don't have water to wash your hands. That makes it terribly difficult. You know, so we're working on ways to help with projects in which they can either get easier access to water or hand sanitizer. So that's Waterbridge Outreach, and you know, I've been just delighted to do both, to have writing in my life and to have, you know, other kind of work in my life. And so yes, I took a small break to try to get everything together, but also, you know, I was working on the book. You know, I never stopped writing. I was just writing slower.
Gail, I also have a little visitor who wanted to say hi really quickly. This is my.
Hi.
I heard you're playing. I hear you're playing ukulele.
Yeah, I'm not very good at
But you will be.
Yes.
Okay.
But my wonderful daughter here created her first book trailer for Gail's book, because it was such a special book for us. So
Hold up.
she just wanted to say hi.
Hold up.
It's a great. Those book trailers are amazing, Kira. I can't believe you did that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Do we have the world premiere?
Yes, I think that would be wonderful.
Thanks. Bye now.
Thank you. That's a great
That was-
trailer. I love it.
That
It was so
great.
cute. I didn't even ask her to do that. She was just excited to do it because she said, "Oh, we're both Japanese and we both love Hawaii." It was so wonderful.
That was one. How old is she, Tara?
Oh, she's 9 years old.
Oh my goodness. That was fantastic.
I don't know, Chris. She might be taking over your job pretty soon.
Done. Too late. Yes.
No. Well, first of all, that was wonderful. What a tribute, to touch somebody like that. And also, Tara and Gail, I'm sorry, I'm late to the show. I didn't realize that you two had never met each other, because you have such this connective tissue, as you were talking about when we first started. And when we did the run through yesterday, Chris and Lainey and I said later, "Oh my God, these guys are so funny together. They're just, you have such a magical, very authentic and lovely relationship with each other." I mean, it's just, not only is this you have this strand of heartfelt humor between the two of you, but there's also, going back to, the role of editor and writer, is this level of trust that I think is really so incredible, because I've heard this before, but to hear an author, and this is your first book in several years, and you've not met each other, you virtually met each other, and you take Tara's advice, and then the greatest compliment, Gail, that you can pay Tara is to say that she made The Color of Air a better book. And I just, it's so touching. And so it is the unique relationship between author and editor, to hear how that process works. And Tara, I'm glad that you asked Gail, were there any rewrites or any, edits that were hard or that you didn't want to do? And then Gail, to hear you say that you needed to sit with them and that they did make sense, it says nothing to me but trust, and in the end, it is an absolutely beautiful book, as evidenced by the book trailer that your daughter made. And the wonderful reads, which are pages and pages of rave, which from fellow authors like Lisa C. and Karen Joy Fowler, Elizabeth George, but also starred reviews from Kirkus and from book lists. I love book lists. I love them all. But I would like to just quickly read book lists, just a couple of sentences from book list starred review, because I think this really captures so much of what you're putting into this book. Okay, so writing with supple and entrancing grace, Tsukiyama has each of her caring, charismatic characters share memories and heartaches. Tsukiyama also evokes the wild, opulent beauty of the island, the harsh lives of migrant workers, racist and domestic violence, mystical connections, the repercussions of a love triangle, and the tolls of age. As the volcano erupts, long-buried secrets and guilt surge to seismic effect. Tsukiyama's dramatic yet discerningly congenial novel confronts the precariousness of existence and celebrates the healing power of generosity and love. Booklist starred review. How they were able to get that all into one quote was amazing, because it says so much about what you put into this book. This is, there's multi-layered. Those characters are wonderful. Tara, for you to say what you said about sort of just, embodying, the reader does, you just sort of get into the skin and under the skin, and you are that person. And I didn't think about that, but it's so true. It does feel that way. And the beginning that you read, Gail, is just opens the door to this time and this place and these people, which we talked about the historical novel, but you could put historical in parentheses, because it's just, it's sort of timeless in a way. So we're thrilled to have you both on here to talk about, how this was born and how its gestation.
That's it. It was a long labor.
I was like your,
Breech
what do they
baby
call
at first.
I was like your doula.
Yeah.
Doula. Associate publisher and doula.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add that to my title.
Your business card must be so big because you have so many things on that business card of yours. We have lots of love here. Lily and Dabney love the reading and the quote. And Lillian says the trailer brought tears to my eyes. Mine too. It's really so sweet. People are loving it, loving the book trailer. This is so wonderful. And there's the link for Waterbridge Outreach, which is right here, so people can find out more about that. I don't know. I know there was, I know one question wasn't answered. You answered some of the other questions just in your conversation, but Monica Thomas asked, how do you choose the names for your characters?
Now that's a good question.
It is a good question. I love the names.
Well, some just kind of pop up as I'm writing. Others are more thought out. I always try to think of names in which readers won't get confused. That's always a hard one when you write about Asian cultures. For instance, it's like, which character was that? Or who is that? And so that's one of my concerns when I'm beginning a book. It's like, Koji was also the middle name of a relative. And I always liked it, Koji. And so that became, the main character. Mariko was a little girl I taught many years ago. Things like that. Some are people from my past, and some are, 6 degrees kind of thing. And others are just names that I find that come up that just pop in my head, like her cousin Jelly.
Oh, yeah.
Where did Jelly come from? I don't know. I'm suddenly in the store and she needed a cousin, and I said, Jelly, and Jelly went down, and it stayed Jelly. So it comes from all different ways. But the main concern is always to choose names that readers can embrace and not forget, and know who's whom. Good question, though.
Yeah.
Gail, did I ever tell you that my mother's name is Makiko? And so when I saw Mariko's name, it was like an extra layer of familiarity somehow when I first read your pages.
We could have used your mom's name. She would have said, what about changing the name? And I would say, no, it's more.
Oh, well, this has been wonderful. We've actually talked for an hour, and it's, Chris and Lainey and I were saying we could not wait for this today because the book is so wonderful, and to hear the two of you talk to each other about the book, how it was written, why it was written, what went into it, it's just enchanting. And really, it's really just so lovely to listen to two wonderful, brilliant people talk about this work of art, The Color of Air. We thank you so much, both of you. Before we go, is there anything that either of you would like to say before we log off?
I'd love to say one thing, and that's, first of all, Virginia, Lainey, Chris, thank you for everything that you do. You guys are doing this all through Corona, which is amazing. And what an opportunity for us to come on here. It's such an honor for me to publish Gail's book. So I just want to raise another glass to Gail and congratulations on the publication of The Color of Air.
I better get some real wine with all this raising. Well, I just also want to thank all of you. What a great way to send this book out into the world. This is my first, really kind of public thing that I'm doing. And I've been terrified to have to do these Zoom things just because it's not something I'm used to. I'm not technical at all. I'm wondering how I even got on here. And the fear of not having the audience reaction in front of you, because I've been so used to being in bookstores and reading to a crowd of 6, but you can see their faces and you can feel the reactions. But to be with all of you made me feel that kind of comfort. So thank you for that also. And thank you for ushering the book into the world. It's a great way to start. To be with my editor and my team.
Well, we have lots of love here from librarians who have embraced your book, and we're just honored to have you here with us today to talk about it. It's truly a gift to us, you and the book, and Tara. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Um, Yes, and congratulations and happy book birthday, and out into the world it goes, and we will continue to talk about it with librarians. So librarians,
Look at there
send
she
it-
is.
there she is.
There she is.
So The Color of Air, beautiful, just beautiful. Wait till you dive in. You won't come out till you're done. It's just absolutely breathtaking. It just sweeps you away. It really
Will
does.
you come with me, Virginia, on virtual book tour?
Sure, let's go. I have one shirt.
You only need to have one shirt on. Don't
Oh,
worry
good.
about it.
Before we go, Chris Laney, housekeeping this Thursday. You want to talk about what we've got going on for anybody who wants to check it out?
Yeah, absolutely. So Thursday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are doing a big fall preview book buzz on Crowdcast. So if you want to join us, again, you're going to get a sneak peek, fall and some winter titles. There'll be sound machines, rest assured, there'll be hijinks, there'll be horseplay, but there will also be the lowdown on some must-read books like Gail's. So yeah, we'll post a link to the Crowdcast registration so you can receive the link come Thursday. And then if you can't join us live, the replay will be available on Crowdcast and Facebook and YouTube and anywhere videos are
It'll be in
not
Times
sold, but
Square.
streamed. It'll be, yep,
Big
it'll be there.
Jumbotron. Times Square.
Those
know.
are
I
our
think we're
goals.
gonna put it on 2 o'clock on Thursday as well here, right? On door to door. We're gonna run it.
Right. Yes.
Okay,
I
let's do
think,
it.
yeah, that's the
Whatever.
plan. Sure. Yes.
That's it. So thank you both again for coming on and sharing the love for librarians and for books and for The Color of Air. Happy birthday and
Thank
take good
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thursday. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.